Now we've got our light set up, what we want to do is make sure our light bulb, our sparks, and our street light move together. So what we can do is in the world outliner, select your spotlight, the light bulb, the sparks, and drag them in to your street light. Now if you select your street light, you can see it should move together. Now we're ready to add our level sequence. So what we can do is right click in our content browser, select new folder, name this level sequence, then go up to cinematics at the top, add level sequence, select our level sequence folder here, and then we could rename it down here. Click save. So it should bring up a window like this. I like to drop mine next to the content browser, but it's completely up to you. To navigate the level sequence, press Control and then use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. And then it's just a right click to drag it away across the timeline. We can now add our light to the sequencer. So if we go to track here, you can see there are different track types such as audio. The one we want is actor to sequencer. So if we scroll down, select our street light, we can now start animating it. So to add a keyframe, just select the plus button here. You can drag this across. Now we want our animation to be a bit more subtle. And you can see the snapping on the rotation is a bit too much. So what we can do, go up here and just reduce it. So now if we rock our light back, add another keyframe, move to about 16 frames, and then we want our light to hit the ground. So it's cutting into the path here. Just move this up. There we go. Add another keyframe. And finally, we'll hit the ground again. So now if we press space, we can play through the animation and see what it looks like. So what we need to do now is draw the player's eye to this action. We can do this by making the light flicker. So if we go to track, actor to sequencer, and then select our spotlight, we can make the light flicker by adjusting the intensity. So we select the intensity, add another keyframe, go to 2 frames, and then drop the intensity to 0, and then add another keyframe. So we can keep doing this every 2 frames. If you left click and drag and highlight your frames, right click and go to copy, right click again, and then paste. and then intensity. So that should be enough. And we want the action to happen after the flickering. So if we left click and drag on our street light frames and just drag them to the last frame, then press space, sorry. You should be able to play through this animation. So these two frames here are wrong, so just delete that. There we go. So now we can add our sparks. So we go to track again, actor to sequencer, and then sparks. Then on the sparks, go to track, and then particle toggle track. This means we can activate and deactivate our sparks. So we want the sparks to activate when the light hits the ground. So change this to deactivate. And then when it hits the ground, activate. So there we go. Now at the moment, when the animation's finished, it will reset and the light will go back up. We can stop this by on our street lamp here, our street light, sorry. Right click on the timeline, go to properties, and then when finished, keep state. And we want the same for the sparks as well. So on the timeline, right click, properties, when finished, keep state. To add audio to your sequence, go to track, audio track, and then by selecting the plus sign on your audio track, you can choose what audio you want to add. So I've got a metal crashing sound here. I can just start trimming this audio. And then I can move it along to play when the lamp hits the road. Make sure the end of your timeline is at the end of your audio track so it doesn't cut it off. So now we can add our box trigger. So if we go to place actors, down to basic, you'll see a box trigger here. We just drag that in. Scale it up a bit. So we can test this box trigger and see it in our game if we go to details and then down to rendering, we can uncheck actor hidden in game. So when we click play, it means we can see it. So now with my box trigger selected, if I go to blueprints and then open my level blueprint, in the event graph, right click, we can add an event for our trigger box. So if I drop this down, go to collision, you can see add an actor, begin overlap. So when we overlap with this box trigger, it means we can play our level sequence. So if we drag off, go to cast to third person character. other actor, hook that up to object, and then off cast a third person character, search for print string. So we can use print strings to check that our overlap is working. So in string here, we can change this to whatever we want. So I'll change mine to overlap, compile and save. So when I click play, overlap, in the top left hand corner, you can see overlap shows up in the top left hand corner. So we know that the box trigger is working. So after print string, we want do once. The reason we're using this is so our animation doesn't play every single time we overlap with the box trigger, so it doesn't keep repeating the animation over and over again. So we'll just compile and save this again. We need to get a reference to our level sequence. So just select sort of the, what is it, a director's clapperboard? Can't remember what it's called. But so if we go back into our blueprint, our level blueprint, right click, and then we can see create a reference to Lampfall, our level sequence. So off this, search for play, and then what we want is play sequence player. So that's it. So when we overlap with the trigger box, it'll play our sequence once. So if I just highlight all this, and press C on my keyboard, I can comment this, just so it's a bit more organized. So name this level sequence. Compile and save. So I'll play.